I'd like to thank all members for being here today as the committee comes to order. It's an honor to convene the Intelligence Committee for the 114th Congress. I'd like to welcome all of our new and returning members here today. Further, we are joined by our witnesses for this committee's investigation, former Guardian reporter Glenn Greenwald.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon. Former National Security Agency Director, General Keith Alexander.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Great to see you. Secretary of State, John Kerry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon. Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union, Anthony DiRomero.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon. And reporter Laura Poitras.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon. We face a difficult scenario today, where our First Amendment rights are in conflict with the impending threat of a terrorist attack on our nation, on our soil. As Edward Snowden revealed to the world in June 2013, the National Security Agency has been conducting mass, all-encompassing surveillance on the American people. Snowden's title changes on based who you ask, whether he was a hero, a whistleblower, a dissident, a patriot, or even a traitor, is for our committee to discuss today. All the same, the nuance surrounding where the line between protection and invasion of privacy is drawn should be debated, along with where journalists, government employees, and the agencies themselves stand in this tense atmosphere. While these questions are formidable, I'm convinced our committee contains the brainpower and the resources to find fulfilling answers through working together and addressing all sides of this conflict. And with that, would all of our witnesses rise and raise their right hands? Do you all solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. You may be seated. Okay, and first order of business. We will introduce with Glenn Greenwald. He has 3 minutes on the floor.
Thank you. As I speak now to this Congress before me, it has been over 2 years since I first made contact with Edward Snowden, and was first introduced not only to the passionate, laudable patriot that he is, but to the astonishing and frankly unacceptable extent of government surveillance that is going on as we speak on our beloved soil and abroad. And to all my opponents before me, I wish I could be like you, trusting our leaders to use their power properly and uphold our constitutional rights. But as I worked with Snowden and learned more about the secret practices of the NSA, wiretapping, hustling U.S. citizens' personal information from phone carriers, spying internationally on diplomatic meetings, literally reading your emails, it grew near impossible to live in such blissful ignorance. And so, over the next series of months, I worked with Snowden himself and film producer Laura Poitras to create a series of news stories attempting to inform a drastically misinformed public about what's being done behind their backs. And as the first wave of articles went live, along with the video that took the internet by storm, the public was in an uproar, and deservedly so. How could this go on? How could no one see the harm or blatant unconstitutionality of an agency that literally strives to collect it all? The people of America wanted answers, but answers they would not receive. As the government tried desperately to cover its gaping footsteps, it did everything it could to lessen the threat by attacking Snowden and not his ideas. An ad hominem, you could say. It's been done time and time again. Whether it's the Pentagon Papers or the Declaration of Independence, it's far easier for the ruling power to call freedom fighters traitors than to consider the righteousness of their principles. And so came the media backlash, blindly accusing Snowden of treason, using the same tired appeals to national security, while it's the security of every man watching this hearing that's being compromised. And so strengthened my admiration for Edward Snowden, a lone soul willing to stand up against his agency's horrible practices, and a lone protector of morality and justice. Edward Snowden is no traitor. He's standing up for the very principles this nation prides itself upon. He's the sort of hero we need to keep America strong and keep America free. Thank you.
Thank you for your input, Mr. Greenwald. The chair now recognizes Keith Alexander for 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm General Keith Alexander, former chief of the NSA. I'd like to thank the committee for holding this hearing and inviting me to represent the work of dedicated professionals at the National Security Agency who help protect this nation and everyone's civil liberties and privacy. As a former NSA chief, I know that everything the NSA has done is perfectly legal, proven by the numerous laws and acts that have been enacted in order for us to allow widespread use of surveillance. This widespread surveillance has, in over 50 separate cases, helped disrupt terrorist plots or information intended to help terrorist plots against the United States of America. We had never and have never lost the public's faith, nor Congress's faith, and we've been doing our job successfully thanks to these laws. Many people complain about our collecting of phone calls. However, this strategy in particular is responsible for stopping at least 10 of the 50 terrorist plots. Everything we do is highly monitored to be sure that it is legal and following every single rule enacted to keep the NSA in line. Edward Snowden, the whistleblower in this case, is nothing more than an unpatriotic traitor who wishes ill fate upon this great country. If Mr. Snowden really cared about the United States and the citizens that reside here, he would have done his job and not leaked top secret information, the exact information that we use to stop terrorist plots against the United States of America. It is very clear that we have not breached any laws at all, and I see no validity in any of Mr. Snowden's claims. He's caused irreversible damage to the protection of the United States and our allies. He's been too much of a coward to even show his face back in America because he knows what he has done to America and the American people has harmed anyone and everyone and put us all at great risk. If Americans are looking for someone to call patriotic, then they need not look further at any honest NSA employee who does their best every day to go to work and protect the United States of America, not one that puts us directly in harm's way. Thank you.
Thank you, General. The chair now recognizes the representative from the great state of California to question Mr. Greenwald.
Hello, Mr. Greenwald. I would like to thank you for your bravery in publishing Snowden's revelations. As citizens of a democracy, it is our job to check our government when it infringes on our rights, and I believe that your work is accomplishing just that. Freedom of the press is a valued right of the American people, yet it is my understanding that the U.S. government attempted to hinder some of your publications. Was the government illegally or dishonestly attempting to hinder your right to speak freely concerning the publication of Snowden's revelations?
Thank you. I do believe that my freedom of the press was interfered with by the U.S. government, and which is somewhat understandable given their position, but that makes it no less unacceptable that they tried to prevent the publication of the stories I wrote. And as a result of that, I actually had to work with The Guardian and publish it from a non-US based publisher so that I could be ensured that my articles would be released fairly and without being edited by people working with the government. Because, as I know with my experience in media, a lot of publications in the US are secretly work with the government and they check with them to see if they're comfortable with certain things being released. And I don't think that's fair, because then things like the NSA will stay hidden from the American public, and I think that's deceiving. So I had to go out of my way to avoid this and had to be very careful to make sure my message was properly received.
I'd like to thank the great state of California for that question. The chair now recognizes the representative from the great state of Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that warm introduction. Mr. Greenwald, you agreed that privacy, and these are your direct quotes, is an essential feature of any free society so we can explore the boundaries of ourselves. But when, sir, is it considered appropriate to risk crossing that boundary between exploring personal privacy and potential threats to this great nation and to our citizens?
Sir, I believe that, contrary to your claim, these NSA leaks have not breached any sort of line of national security, and I think it's the public's right to know what is being done to them. There's nothing in these documents specifically about any terrorist plots, and if, after how long has it been, a year and a half, you can't find any single person who was harmed in any way by the leaking of these documents, I don't think you can say with any validity that these that these leaks have done irreparable damage, as he said, or any sort of damage to our national security. And I think these repeated claims are just frankly irrelevant and avoiding the question.
Mr. Greenwald, with all due respect, sir, unlike your friend, buddy, Mr. Snowden, we as a country do not give ourselves to be traitors to this great nation that our forefathers have built, and we have information that we do not give out to the public like your friend, Mr. Snowden. And just like Mr. Alexander said in his opening statement, if you were paying attention, it has stopped 10 of 50 NSA threats. And these are just some of the information that he's revealing. Some of the things behind closed doors that not everyone needs to know about is there, and I can affirm that statement.
Thanks, great state of Alabama, for their input. We now, Chair will now recognize the great state of Maine.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Greenwald, for your testimony and your work on revealing this problem in our democracy. I'd just like to ask, what improvements did you seek to bring about in our government, in our democracy, by exposing Edward Snowden's and bringing publicity to Edward Snowden's leaks?
Thank you. First and foremost, I think the primary purpose in leaking the documents was to just increase public knowledge about these programs and increase disclosure so that the public is informed about what's going on behind their backs, and so that when the public has to make its decisions on what we want, whether we want to push for reform of the NSA or more government oversight, they're more informed on the issues. And because if a public isn't informed, they can't make proper decisions and the democracy falls apart. And I'm just a man, and I don't think I should be the one to make decisions over what exactly happens to the government. However, there are one or two things that I think strongly should be changed. First, the Senate and House Intelligence Committees have not been doing their job properly. Their job is to perform oversight on the NSA, and frankly, they have been not doing that in any way. They push for, quote, NSA reform, but what happens is quite the opposite of that. And I think we should improve that, and as I would also approve repealing parts of the Patriot Act that violate our constitutional rights. But beyond that, I think we as a public can decide what we want as a nation for our government, because we are the people and we make the decisions.
Thank you.
Very well. Chair now recognizes the great state of South Carolina for questioning General Alexander.
General Alexander, you had almost unlimited access to high-level documents and to the technological information of many Americans and foreigners. I would like to ask you, as a former member of the NSA, do his leaks put the safety of our nation in danger?
Yes, his leaks put the safety of our great nation at an incalculable risk. What we had in the NSA protected not only us, but our allies. Through leaking all of that information, everyone who has anything against us or our allies now knows how we take mass surveillance, how we avoid terrorist plots. So if they know how we avoid terrorist plots, they can now plan again around that, and they will be able to eventually create a terrorist plot that could harm our nation.
So what you're saying is that now we have to change our protocols, which have been used and successful for so many years because Edward Snowden wanted his 15 minutes of fame, essentially.
Exactly. The NSA has to completely reevaluate everything that they do and recheck everything to make sure that now our program, because it's been breached and just set out to the entire world, we have to make sure that it is still going to be able to protect the United States of America.
Thank you.
Very great point, South Carolina. Chair now recognizes the great state of Arizona for question.
Good afternoon, General Alexander. I understand that you have been made aware about an interesting theory regarding Snowden's relations with Russia. Could you please elaborate on this topic to the committee?
Yes, that's actually a great question. Thank you. So, General Kalugin, who is a former KGB officer, who now resides in the United States, alluded to the fact that Snowden might be a Russian spy. His quote was that if he, regarding Snowden, is in Russia, he's clearly working for the FSB. There's no way they would let him sit there in Russia without any sort of cooperation. Now, the FSB is sort of the secret service of Russia and Putin. So, what type of cooperation would they have? How about all they need is to put Russia on a higher moral ground than America? I'm not saying that they need to attack us, but Snowden was somehow able to get from an undisclosed location contact to make a direct phone call to President Putin during Putin's nationwide question and answer with President Putin. Now, Snowden asked him, President Putin, do you have any sort of mass surveillance? And Putin, over the entire nation of Russia's television, goes, no, we do not have any mass surveillance. If we were ever to use surveillance upon someone, we would need a court order to do that. Now, Russia will do anything to just have a higher moral ground, anything to get ahead of America. If this is how Putin wanted to do that, then it would be perfectly plausible that Snowden could be a Russian spy working for the Russian government, and they don't need information that could attack us, but just something to make Russia seem better than the United States of America.
General Alexander, I'd like to remind you that the Cold War ended over 20 years ago, and as I'm sure the Honorable Secretary Kerry can attest to, at the time of the leaks, relations between the U.S. and Russia were at an all-time high. So I'm a little curious as to how this theory of yours came up.
Well, it's pretty easy to say that, oh, I haven't gotten over the Cold War. But if you look, no, I'm saying that if you look at all the information, not only was an undisclosed location, we had analysts analyze the video and phone call from his call to Putin. They don't know, they can't tell if it's a live video or if it was pre-recorded. They have no information on either. So he very clearly could have been set up and set that video to Russia. Why would they allow him to stay there without any form of cooperation? Have you ever tried to contact President Putin over a direct line and gotten a call? Because I'm pretty sure he wouldn't pick up. But he would pick up for Edward Snowden, who has classified information over the United States of America.
Chair here, General.
Chair now recognizes Anthony D. Romero.
That's a great point, though. Great point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My fellow Americans, I stand here as a devout supporter of democracy. And in this current age, there are countless threats to this wonderful nation. We're fighting against the shadows, against terrorism. And the NSA serves to protect America from the terrorists by meeting the challenges the enemy gives us, and ultimately is a program that can be effectively proactive in our national defense. We need the NSA. The real question here today is what type of NSA we should have. We need an organization that can be held accountable for its actions and be subject to checks and balances to maintain proper operation. Unfortunately, the NSA has grown out of check and blatantly violated our Fourth Amendment rights. And in such circumstances, for the better of our great nation and its people, someone had to take action. This is why I defend with my freedom Edward Snowden's actions. He is a patriot. His heroic sacrifice gave the American people the truth about the NSA and its unrelenting invasion of our privacy. He defended all of our rights, and now we must defend his. Snowden is not a traitor. He is standing up for his country and its people. He invokes the same principles that our founding fathers used when creating this very nation. When an entity becomes unfit for its power, it is the people's duty to take charge. Snowden did just that. By sacrificing his life, he has given us the clearest image of the NSA that we could ever ask for. The NSA's mantra of gather it all, know it all, far exceeds its original purpose of preventing attacks against Americans. It now serves to spy on every American, both at home and abroad. If we do not change the NSA, then we will be forced to change. We will no longer be able to trust any form of communication. Private data will be gathered by supercomputers, and our freedom will deteriorate. I reiterate my firm belief. Snowden is a beacon of the American spirit, and his work has warned us of a threat native in our very own government, one that we must address now before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morero. The chair now recognizes the great state of Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Romero, for taking your time to be here today. If personal rights and freedoms get in the way of the government's ability to keep U.S. citizens safe, what makes the fight to protect such freedoms worth it?
Thank you. So, clearly, America is facing a huge range of threats from around the globe today. And as I stated before, the NSA is extremely important in ensuring our safety as a nation, and they should continue to do their best to acquire important information that can prevent future attacks. That being said, spying on everyday American cell phone calls and email chains does not offer protection from terrorists. It's very straightforward. If you get a lead on a terrorist, you can search on them, and you don't have to search on the entire American populace while you're doing that. The NSA has an extreme amount of resources, and their methods of acquiring critical information that is directed towards the American public safety is clearly something that they're able to do. But the fact that they have gone above their original order to and now spy on every single American is something that I think is proving that they have grown out of check and should be, rebuilt from the ground up.
The chair now recognizes Great State Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Romero, it is my understanding that Mr. Edward Snowden came to you for some advice in getting across his message to the American people that our government had an overuse of power by spying over them. When he came to you with these classified documents that were supposed to be only for the government official eye, you saw the information of abuse of detainees and other methods of torture or things that did not need to get out and could put our country in further danger. My question for you is, how do you go to bed at night knowing that little girls and boys could be attacked at any moment by the foreign enemy? We are not the enemy, sir. The enemy is abroad, and we are in greater risk now more than ever. Thank you.
I appreciate your concern, Senator, for the American people, or Congressman. I would just like to give my explanation and a take on what actually happened and what you described. Edward Snowden came to me, and I gave him advice regarding what he could do legally under the First Amendment. And this was based on what documents he could and could not publish. However, all actions he took following our exchange were solely his, and done without any involvement with the ACLU or myself. Snowden is responsible for all of his own actions, and he completely understood the legal implications of his choices.
Okay, sir. You keep telling yourself that.
All right, the chair now recognizes Senator John Kerry.
Fellow witnesses, congressmen, congresswomen, and honorable chair, I would like to personally thank you for the opportunity that you have given me here today to share my beliefs and experiences with you all as your Secretary of State. I have assumed the position I occupy here today through great perseverance, dedication for my country, and most of all, my willingness to put my strong foot forward to help our country in a time of need. Now, I believe that our country has created a platform that enables its citizens to share their beliefs democratically. I, however, am by no means in support of putting our country's safety and security at risk through doing so. Mr. Edward Snowden, a traitor and coward to this nation, has released valuable information to not only enemies of this country, but to those who can potentially harm our nation in numerous ways. In the past, I have stated that what he's done is hurt his country, and what he's done is expose for terrorists, let me reiterate, for terrorists, numerous mechanisms which now affect operational security of those terrorists and make it harder for the United States to break up plots and protect this great nation. I believe Edward Snowden should man up, come back to the United States, and if he has something to say about this country, this great country, he should stand before our judicial system and plead his case. He is not only violating his oath, but he's betraying the fundamental agreement he entered when he became an employee for this nation. There is no reason that any act of injustice by the government should not be heard from within the United States, where we can democratically and accurately examine the situation and make any necessary changes. Further, Mr. Snowden, in an attempt to help his country, has become a traitor and subsequently turned the heads of the United States' enemies. We sit here today next to Mr. Glenn Greenwald and Mrs. Laura Poitras, who have exhibited to the world that they are traitors to this nation, exposing our great nation's utmost confidentiality. Behind me, Mr. Alexander, a powerful NSA chief in his time, has proven to be the quintessence of terrorist prevention. Though we may not relay the information to the public regarding this, let me assure you, the system works. I, as Secretary of State of this great nation, have been in contact with our nation's leaders, especially our President, and he has agreed with the statements I have made before you today. Let me end with this. If Edward Snowden were truly a patriot, he would come back here where we would welcome him. Further, I would add, put him on a flight to the United States and listen to his case before a judicial system. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary of State. The chair now recognizes the great state of Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2002, you wrote that Daniel Ellsberg demonstrated enormous courage during a difficult and turbulent time in America's history, courage which undoubtedly saved American lives on the battlefield and helped to hold politicians accountable for mistakes they refused to admit. His story reminds us that to fulfill the responsibilities of citizens is to always ask questions and to demand the truth. Why do you believe that Daniel Ellsberg's actions yield praise while Edward Snowden's similar decision to release information makes him a traitor?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I very much appreciate that question. I would like to first point out that the United States is fundamentally developed on the sentiment that we all stand up for what we believe in. Now, would you agree with that? I'm hoping so.
Yes.
Okay. Our ability to vocalize our opinions is key. At the time, Daniel Ellsberg stood before us inside the United States, and released the papers at a time where his situation was properly evaluated within our country, before the necessary officials, of course. Now, in the case of Mr. Edward Snowden, he has cowardly fled to Russia, a competing country, and released valuable information that puts our nation's security at risk. Now, I am not for that. Let me reiterate that. As Secretary of State, I have a lawful and moral duty to protect this nation, and I firmly believe that Mr. Snowden has done what he has done has jeopardized our nation's safety in a time where our country is vulnerable to foreign attacks. I believe that what he's done is critically wrong. As a veteran of this nation, this is my stance. Thank you.
Thank you, great state of Connecticut, for that one. Chair now recognizes the great state of Arizona.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kerry. I was wondering if you could explain how terrorists can use the information spread by Edward Snowden to hurt our informants, citizens, and nation as a whole.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Listen, my title is Secretary of State, and for that reason, I can share with you only limited amounts of information regarding foreign threats, as it is utterly confidential. I believe a woman in your position should be fully aware of this notion, and should even consider the repercussions of me opening up about confidential threats to this nation that have been uncovered. However, Mr. Snowden's decision to release this information provides a platform for attackers to pinpoint American intelligence and facilitate their operations. I again will reiterate, Ms. Congresswoman, I am not willing to put this country's security at risk.
Okay, I'd just like to add that I was trying to help you out with that question. I'm on your side here,
Please-
Mr. Carey.
Please yield to the chair. Chair now recognizes Laura Poitras.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Porteous. I first met Edward Snowden while working on a documentary about governmental surveillance shortly after 9/11. It was an issue I had always felt strongly about, and I wanted to share my views through the best way I knew how, filmmaking. Shortly after our encounter, I began receiving encrypted emails from Citizen4, claiming to be a senior government employee in the intelligence community with high-risk information about surveillance. Little did I know then that Citizen4 was in fact Edward Snowden, and that he was about to change my life forever. With my good friend Glenn Greenwald facilitating Snowden's entry into the world, I was able to help reveal the depth of the NSA, including their craving for data and ways of collecting communications. Without him, everyone would be unaware of the amount of information that the government is collecting. Snowden's contributions have changed the consciousness about the dangers of surveillance and our future with technology. I find it shocking how little our elected officials knew, or claimed they knew, about what the NSA was doing. As a major federal corporation, the NSA has failed to inform all members of the government about the monitoring of the common people, and the president kept quiet about the operations. The capacity for retroactive searching frightens me the most. Not unlike many other American citizens, I don't feel at ease knowing that the NSA can go back in time and trace someone who is in contact, trace who someone is in contact with and where they've been. When it comes to my profession as a journalist, nothing is ever private for me. And even if I commit to protect my sources, the government may still have information that might allow them to identify whom I'm talking to and where I've been. Edward Snowden is to thank for informing us of these risks and revealing the invasive powers of the NSA, allowing citizens the right to be warned about their endangered privacy. Edward Snowden is a hero and a brave citizen of the United States.
Thank you very much, Ms. Poitras. Chair now recognizes the great state of South Carolina.
You have been quoted saying that surveillance programs threaten the Fourth Amendment, and there's a fine line when it comes to national security and personal rights, so I'm wondering, where do you personally draw that line?
Thank you. There is a fine line. The fine line for me is my personal emails, my calls, my text messages. Those are my personal information. Those not only have been tracked without a warrant, the NSA is not only abolishing our Fourth Amendment rights, but making illegal acts by not having a warrant, by tracking our every move. I have been stopped at countless borders for no reason at all and been asked questions about where I've been, who I've been talking to. All of my friends have been questioned for no reason at all. This does not help national security. This is in breaching my personal privacy. That's where I draw the line.
I'd like to thank the state of South Carolina for that. We'll now move on to the great state of California.
Ms. Porteous, I would like to congratulate you on the Academy Award you just received for your documentary Citizen4. This prestigious award certainly indicates that you have a strong backing of support, and I think that looking into the success of your documentary provides valuable insight into the righteousness of your work with Snowden, as well as a confirmation of Snowden's patriotism. Would you tend to agree?
I agree completely with that, and thank you very much for that compliment. It was a wonderful documentary that took a while to make and had a very, very good run because people were so supportive and so in agreement. Even at the Oscars, when I made my speech, everyone applauded and everyone was in agreement with me. Not only did the movie bring to light the things that the NSA were doing illegally, but it also brought to light the fact that Edward Snowden is a patriot of the nation, as you said. He is a brave man, and what he did was outstanding for the people of the United States. And it was very important for people to see that.
I'd like to thank the great state of California for that question. We will now move to the great state of Alabama.
Yes, Mrs. Poitras. In your opening address, you noted that if it weren't for the great hero of Edward Snowden, who I deem a coward, you would not be able to safely have emails with this traitor. So my question, I guess, is that if I think it seems to me as if you're doing exactly what the NSA is out to stop. What is to say that the NSA now does not have the ability to stop maybe not you talking to Edward Snowden, who deems a hero, but another traitor who's trying to infiltrate this country and make it susceptible to foreign attacks. So you are the very problem. So if you're saying that if it ain't for Edward Snowden, you won't be able to do that, then who's to say that if it ain't for Edward Snowden, that now we're going to get in a big pickle with another country? Thank you.
I'm actually not the problem, state of Alabama.
Actually, Representative, you can call me Mr. Congressman.
Mr. Congressman, I'm not the problem. After these leaks were made, it's been, what, a year and a half, and nothing has happened.
We already established that there have been some cases that we will not reveal to the great nation because we are not cowards.
Again, the NSA is hiding information from us like they always do. I'm not the problem.
We try to keep you safe.
Yes, and it's been a year and a half, and nothing has happened.
Told you about
Excuse me,
threats.
may I respond to your question?
Sure.
Thank you. It's been a year and a half, as we established, since Edward Snowden's revealance of the NSA's illegal actions, and no national security events have happened.
I just said
it's been completely safe, unless the NSA is hiding information from us, which it does. What the most important thing that I think is their emails, their calls, their where I've been. It's my personal information, and it completely disregards the Fourth Amendment, and that is what I think is the most important thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fortress. Thank you, Representative from the great state of Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm glad to say that our committees began to make headway into this complicated issue surrounding the National Security Agency and the acts of Edward Snowden. Opinions are polarized. However, I can see that our committee is most definitely leaning to see the danger Edward Snowden has caused to this great nation. And with issues like these, only time will tell. However, from where we stand, I believe that Edward Snowden may have been a great threat to our national security. Knowing that, I would like to thank all witnesses being present here today, and we stand adjourned.